Good morning to all the folks on the West Coast, and for the rest of the country, good afternoon. I am George DeMarco, ESX Chairman, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all our listeners on today's ESX webinar, and it is called Avoiding a Failure to Communicate, Next-Gen Communications Technologies and Best Practices, sponsored by Napco StarLink. And I want to give a shout out to all the folks on the webinar. Thanks for taking the time today to sharpen your business and technical skills, allowing you to stay relevant in today's rapidly evolving business environment. And of course, our goal is to provide as much information as we can in 60 minutes. If we go over by a few minutes, it's to make sure we answer as many questions for you as possible. As many of you know, sunsets are beautiful to look at, unless, of course, it's directly related to an adverse change in connectivity to an M2M device on a mobile network, such as 2G or for plain old telephone service known as POTS lines. Typically, when referring to mobile technology, the G denotes generation, and the higher number associated with it usually means better, faster technology. But how is this affecting the electronic security and life safety industry and end users? How will manufacturers and software providers keep pace with the seemingly endless sunsets planned in the future? How will dealers and integrators protect end users' properties and still secure their RMR? We will answer these questions and more. But to be a better competitor and a better business operator, it is imperative that you understand what it really takes to meet the current and future demands of a changing mobile communications network. And to have a meaningful conversation about avoiding the failure to communicate, we brought together a terrific lineup of industry professionals who are willing to share their thoughts on this subject. Introducing Jim Corbett, owner of United Alarm, Morgan Hertel, VP of Operations for Rapid Response, Peter Giacalone, President of Giacalone Associates, and last but not least, George Chavia, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Napco Security Technologies. I almost gave you a promotion there, George. And again, I am George DeMarco, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be made available for viewing on ESXweb.com in the coming days. And we encourage you to submit a question at any point in the presentation. Just click on Questions in the webinar window, type in your question, and we'll have our panelists answer it at the Q&A portion of the program after all the presentations are complete. Speaking of ESX, you won't want to miss it this year. Held at the Fort Worth Convention Center, ESX is designed specifically for electronic security and life safety dealer, integrator, and monitoring companies. It's packed full of relevant content and thought-provoking ideas, all delivered by business and industry thought leaders. At the end of today's session, I will remind you about the Super Saver pricing and an opportunity to qualify for the group discount. So here we have a few learning objectives for today. We're going to talk about the importance of being connected, avoiding liability, and keeping the RMR, the viable communications that are available, how to assess them, and make sure what's right for the end user, and of course your company too, and where the future of all this is going. And remember, we encourage you at any time to submit your questions and make sure we meet your learning objectives. And now a word from our sponsor, Napco StarLink. George Chavia brings much experience to the industry as Napco's Senior VP of Sales and Marketing, and from well-known brands such as Diageo, Pfizer, Lipton, and Colgate-Palmolive. Please welcome George as he presents his perspective on today's webinar and Napco StarLink. George, you're up.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate that promotion you gave me. I'm going to count on that. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the communication landscape out there, and then offer, I guess, some opportunity areas that we have as all the dealers out there are upgrading their communications. So the first slide, please. Hello?
George, you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's right. As most of you already know, the 2G network is scheduled to sunset as of January 1st, 2017. So naturally, not keeping up with that could spell curtains for your RMR. Next slide, please. The two major services out there that are going to replace this 2G as of the end of the year are the CDMA and 3G, 4G, GSM technologies, namely under the Verizon and AT&T brand names. Those wireless providers are a little coy about exactly how long that technology is going to last, but we believe it's well into the next 8 to 10 years. Next slide, please. Then you have the next communication frontier, which we believe will phase in sometime about the middle of the 2025 year, which is 4G LTE. What's happened is there's been a jostling for who's going to be the standard in future technology, and both AT&T and Verizon are really pretty much standardized on the fact that 4G LTE is going to be the future. So the next thing is I'd like to cover is opportunities. I mean, we really look at this as, gee, we better upgrade from 2G. We don't want to lose our RMR. But I think as all the dealers out there upgrade to the next communication technology, there are several opportunities. I'd like to go over those. Next slide, please. So naturally, you have we have StarLink, both CDMA and 3G, 4G alarm communicators. And then next slide, please. We have a program where we're trying to ease the pain of upgrading from 2G, right? So we provide a $70 credit to your account that offsets the $99.95 price of our regular intrusion radio, and nets it down to $29.95. And then for a fire radio, which is regularly priced $129.95, you apply that $70 credit, and you're getting a fire radio for $59.95. So what we're trying to do is really ease the pain of the 2G upgrade. Next slide. And then we have, obviously, a full line of commercial communicators under the StarLink brand. Everything from fire and intrusion to intrusion only, metal enclosures, and things like that. We provide sole path fire communication. And here's the first opportunity, the next slide. So what you have going on out in the marketplace is a tremendous decline in POTS lines. You have literally about a 65% penetration of POTS lines that's still available in the country. You have a tremendous opportunity to increase your RMR by doing the following. If you go to an end user customer and you have them replace the expensive double POTS leased landlines that they have in place with one sole path cellular communicator, fire communicator, what you're doing for the end user is they're able to get rid of 2 POTS lines at a price to them of about $110 a month. So you save them $2,640. You replace those POTS lines with one sole path fire communicator. You charge them $70 a month. So it's a win-win. You save the end user $1,800, and you redirect the RMR from the phone company to your company. So that's a tremendous opportunity that's going on right now. And obviously, as POTS lines go away, and you have all the fire systems that are out there, it's just going to be unbelievable. Going forward, the next opportunity. Another opportunity, and we're launching a product called StarLink Connect at ISC West. This is a radio that's about half the price of competing radios, and it works on DSC, Honeywell, Napco, and some other panels. And what you're able to do with this in one fell swoop, very cost effectively, is you're able to take the installed base of panels out there and either trade up those consumers to connected home, or if you're doing new installs, you're able to install those panels and then trade up consumers to a connected home when you're doing a communication changeover. So this gives you an opportunity to talk to your old customers and also present all the new connected home, the capability to control your security, your video, climate, lighting, locking, all remotely, and that increases your RMR. So then finally, next slide. I just wanted to cover the things that you should look for in a quality communicator. Number one, you want it to be universal. You want the communicator to work on all panels and applications and report to any central station. You want it to be future-proof. If we can just go to the next slide. Napco is unique in its StarLink technology, and that we have a radio that, let's say you have CDMA technology right now in it, and let's say you have to change over to the new LTE. You're able to go up to that radio and snap out the old modem card, snap in the new modem card, and now it's upgradable in the field to the new technology. So we're a little unique in that area. Next slide, please. And then you want the radio to work with all contact ID and port 2 reporting formats, very important. Full data primary and backup recording you need. You want it to be cost effective, easy installation. And over-the-air upgradable is very important in that a lot of things change in the communication path out there. So what we're able to do is we're able to communicate with our radios and upgrade all the firmware in case anything changes. Very important from a marketing and production standpoint. Then you want an NFPA sole path approved option for fire reporting. And then finally, you want a remote intrusion arm disarm mobile app. I think the next slide shows it. So the radio should be capable of providing your customers with something that everybody really is using nowadays, which is a method to arm and disarm their panels remotely on their smartphone. So that's it. I hope I've summarized a few opportunities going forward. And back to you, George.
Thanks, George, and thanks again to Napco for sponsoring the seminar. Now let's turn to our panelists and get their thoughts. Let's begin with our first presentation from Peter Giacalone from Giacalone Associates. Peter continues a successful career in the electronic security industry spanning over 30 years. He has great operating experience as a C-level executive from dealer to monitoring companies. His expertise is a valuable asset for companies seeking vast industry knowledge. Peter will give us his views on the importance of being connected, avoiding liability, and keeping RMR. So Peter, is this all much to do about nothing, or should dealers and integrators have a strategic and operational plan to deal with these technology changes? Peter, you're up.
Hey, well, thank you. Well, this is a very serious situation that most are aware of, but not everyone is addressing head on, and it's creating a real issue as company operators and for their clients. Please, next slide, please. Customers need to know that you care, obviously, right? We're security professionals, and subscribers come and subscribe to our services because they want to make sure they're getting directed right. The elimination of the traditional POTS lines, and most important, the carrier retransmission through alternate technologies, is really of epidemic proportions. I don't say that to get a wow factor, but it really is. Anyone that has many accounts, and especially central stations that are monitoring, tens or hundreds of thousands of accounts will attest to this. The issue is really proven to be an attrition accelerator for some, but others have seen it as an opportunity to actually create more growth. So we'll discuss a little bit about that. We all know without an existing subscriber base of recurring revenue that's coming in, most companies would not operate. So from a selfish standpoint, you want to make sure you're able to maintain your revenue, but from a realistic standpoint, you want to make sure that you're meeting or exceeding client expectations and at least providing the service that they expect you are. Next. Like I said, it's a challenge, yet it could be an opportunity, and it's proven to be an opportunity for many people who had this straight on. Um, we're tested every day. I mean, you're monitoring systems, you're testing systems. The clients look to the security company in a pretty high level, and unfortunately, a lot of people aren't satisfied with their alarm companies for a variety of reasons. And a lot of companies have taken a positive approach and have really changed this, which is really, really good. And I've seen it actually locally here domestically and internationally where companies are developing much better reputations. The POTS line is a really big problem, and it's a bigger problem than it's ever been before. Anyone who has, like I said, many accounts, you know it's a problem from a mechanical standpoint, but now it's a much bigger problem because of what's going on in the telecommunication world. Um, when a dealer approaches this proactively, uh, the opportunity that's presented is not just the opportunity to correct or mitigate a potential problem, it also is a revenue opportunity for the company at the same time. And as George said before, it really becomes a win-win for everyone. Um, the opportunity exists on a variety of improved methods. George mentioned some of them in his presentation that Napco has, and it really is, if handled and approached properly, you're able to bring this to a customer's attention in a way that they actually understand it, probably even more so than some of the legacy things that they've engaged with in the past. Next. The sit back and wait approach is extremely flawed, and unfortunately, even in my consulting practice, I see dealers taking this approach and dealing with it reactively rather than proactively. And to be quite honest, and not to overstate it, but it's reality. To me, it's negligent. Anyone who's running a company and dealing with this just on a reactive basis is negligent. They're negligent to their shareholders. They're negligent to their clients because they know of an existing problem that you really can't put your finger on per client and know that it's global. It's not sensitive to any city, state, or country. This is a global issue. So, these are some of the things that you shouldn't do. The number one thing, and this is like in bold as bold can be, should not continue to sell any system whatsoever that's reliant on a landline, on a POTS line, on any type of telecommunication solely. This is negligent. Going out knowing that this issue is an issue, and knowing that this is an issue that just continues to get worse, and eventually there's not going to be any chance of communicating, and taking someone's hard-earned money for a new system that's totally reliant on a phone line is just heinous. So that's the number one thing, and unfortunately, there are still companies that are doing this. It's important to keep the subscribers educated, because companies that are not educating their clients are creating a real problem. And you're inviting the competition in to educate them and gain their trust, and of course, allow them to walk away from you and go to now this new company who they've entrusted because they've told them the truth. And a lot of companies are afraid to deal with this. And I've even seen some company try to, kind of tiptoe around it and offer it as a good option. That's not the way to go about it. You're offering it as an option, people think they have a choice. They really don't have a choice if they want monitored security. They need something that's going to work and something you can rely on. Next. From the most basic burglar alarm to full-blown fire alarm system, whether it's video, whether it's home control, it really doesn't make a difference. The connection, the connectivity for the monitoring, for the control, for whatever is going to take place with that system needs to take place on some type of technology other than something that's reliant on a POTS line, on a VoIP line, call it what you will. Anything to the fact that it needs to dial out and is not wireless or not IP based. The connected home and business platform provides a lot of valuable elements, in addition to obviously the monitoring that allows a consumer to control, to monitor, to react. So this is not just about moving the means of communication. You're able to bring them whatever services that they feel they need or whatever they see are valuable. And again, obviously, the fees are all coordinated, but the reality of it is you're going to provide a higher level security and something that you can rely on. Next. Some of the things that should be done. You provide some type of reliable gateway for the customers to access all their information. This takes place at monitoring centers with something as simple as seeing their account history or their call list. But whether it's a basic intrusion system where they just want to see whether it's armed or disarmed, or they want to arm it remotely or not, that should be part of every operation. I mean, these are the shoulds. The musts are, at the bare minimum, there needs to be a communicator there that's not reliant, and that's what this whole presentation is about. And there's no negotiating. Anyone that believes that there's negotiating, anyone that believes it should be a choice for the customer, you're in the wrong paradigm, and you really need to just understand the severity of it. And organizations like Morgan and Rapid, they could attest to it more than anyone because they have millions of accounts and they see it in a magnified manner. But these are all important factors towards providing a complete approach to systems, services, communications, and most important, peace of mind for your valued customers. And that's what you're in the business. You're in the business to make money, but we're in the business to protect and provide peace of mind to clients. Next. The positive alternate means, as we discussed, I mean, the industry has a host of them. Just about every manufacturer has something. You saw some that Napco had today. You have your choices. It's just a matter of putting it together properly and presenting it. And the hidden issues are the telecommunication companies that are transporting calls in a non-traditional manner behind the scenes. Everybody looks at this issue as, oh, a lot of people are canceling POTS lines. That's an issue. They forget to tell us. People can't go to VoIP or to some other alternate cable service. These are all things that somewhat you think are manageable. They're really not, but somewhat you could argue that they are. When the telecommunication providers make the changes behind the scenes and the consumer, the alarm company, and the central station have no clue about it until an alarm signal doesn't come in, that's a real issue. And that's the biggest issue that's growing at a most rapid rate. And that's the thing that's going to take companies down. These changes, obviously, on every front, they result in an inconsistency of successful alarm signal communications to the central monitoring center, and that's a problem. Nobody wants to be on the receiving end of a call where we missed a fire alarm signal, a panic signal, or burglar alarm signal because it happened to come at a high traffic time where there's echoing on the broadband connection, and there was loss of life or property. Next. We're fortunate as an industry that we have choices, and what's most important is that you make the right choices that are right for your client base and that you present them in a way that makes sense. You're trying to present something that's credible, that really sells on its merits. This is not smoke and mirrors. This is not about making more money, although it could result in making more money. It's about doing the right thing for the clients. And we have a variety of means for subscribers to stay connected, and it's our responsibility as security professionals to bring that across. Next. Communicating the benefits and how this whole ecosystem is valuable, meaningful, and how it plays into their lifestyle is most important. So, take this very serious, and in spite of the existing and antiquated structures, the industry does have answers to these issues. Thanks. Okay.
Oh, let's try that again. There we go. How's that?
That was good.
Peter, thank you very much. And it's just so we don't have a failure to communicate on our end, we have some questions that are coming in. They will be answered at the end of all the presentations. Okay? So we're going to go to our next presenter, Jim Corbett, owner of United Alarms. He's been providing security in the Connecticut area for the past 42 years, and he's personally, now watch this number, listen to this number, he's personally responsible for installing north of 3,000 residential systems. Jim is an expert in all phases of security, especially CCTV. Please welcome Jim as he shares his thoughts on what he considers the viable communications technologies available today and how to assess which one is right for you and the end user. Jim, you've been around since 1974 in this industry. From that point in time to today, How has communications technologies changed, and what do you see as the most viable solutions for your customers today, whether it's fire or burglary or anything in between?
Thank you for having me, George. And Napco, thank you for inviting me in to speak. So I've been using this product for a long time. I started in the industry in 1974 as a kid out of high school, electrical school, and fell into the alarm business. And back in those days, there was a thing called Direct Connect. They did have POTS lines that were very reliable. You had tape dialers. You put your recording on, your voice on there, and it'd go right to the police department. Worked very fine. It worked fine. Then the advent of digital communication came in. Usually it was 3-1 communication back in those days. And that's basically the same communicators we had these days, except for now it's contact ID, SIA. 4.2 is kind of obsolete at this point. But that was the beginning of how I was working over phone lines. And it worked very well for years. Very reliable. Direct lines were reliable, except for during a storm they would go down, but it was a higher level of security. But phone lines were very, very reliable. And I go back to the days back then, if anybody remembers a commercial by MCI, they always had their commercial on TV. Can you hear the pin drop? Well, nowadays we go to people, can you hear the elephant falling through the window? Because the communication in the POTS lines world, or VoIP, is not what it used to be. It's not as reliable. It's not clean. So back in the days, 70s and the 80s, when I started using Napco product, late 70s, it was very reliable POTS lines. Then we got into the 90s. And as we know, the internet came along. Al Gore came along and invented an internet, as we all know. So that changed things. Then different telecommunications companies come and get involved. And the POTS line started to change. The way that they would operate the COs, the phone companies, a little bit different how they ran their communication paths. It started to turn into VoIP. POTS lines were starting to go away. And VoIP is basically a voice grade line. And what is our alarm system? It dials with tones, and then it has to send pulses. And that's the problem, because what happens, it gets decompressed at the site, goes through their network, and it gets recompressed on the other end. And then it would go sometimes to a POTS line to get to a central station. But the problem is they're losing some of the tones, and that's why I know the next speaker, Morgan from Rapid, I've talked to Jeff up there, and they get 100,000 signals a day, if not more. And how many of these signals get scrambled? Quite a few. We have our own central that I see all day long that miss test signals, and I go and check, and it got thrown over to a different account because some of the tones have got scrambled. So it's a big problem in this industry as the POTS lines go away and people are switching to VoIP or getting rid of their phone lines altogether. So basically going forward, POTS lines kind of phasing out. They still work okay, but nobody's going to those. They're going away big time. VoIP is coming in, and alarm panels do not work well with that. So in the past few years, the technology available today has been IP, which is basically internet communication from the location right to the central station. Very reliable, works very well in the right atmosphere, or GSM technology, or cellular communicators. That's which I believe is going to be the most popular coming forward. And I'll give the pitfalls of both of them, the benefits also. IP, I do believe the industry thought that was going to take over everything. That was going to be a new communication method because it is very reliable, very clean signals to go through. It's data, clean data. The problem you have, especially in the residential world, who has a good modem at their house that when the power goes out, what happens? Your internet's down, and you think the alarm's going to communicate? No. So that's a big problem. If you have a big industry that has a great T1, I think IP is viable for that application. But you still have this situation where a phone line could be cut, the internet could be down, so your security level is a little bit lower, and it goes along the line of a POTS line or VoIP. It's not as high security. But so IP is one of the communication methods available to this day. And Napco does have a NetLink module, which is an IP communicator. It goes right from the site directly to choose to use. And very reliable. Works very well. It does its check-in depending on what you pick. If it's a fire system, where you got to have a different plan, or if it's a residential, a lot of things are available for that. But I really want to discuss GSM, because to me that's the way the future is going to be, which would be cell towers. And that's what we couldn't quite a bit. And then GSM, which would be the global system of mobile communication. It's been around quite a while. I think in '96 was the first company that came out, but it worked okay. They were very expensive at the time. And I did put a few of the earlier ones in. Very expensive monthly, very expensive upfront cost. So in the last few years, as Napco come out with a full data radio, which we have installed at this point about 1,700 radios. And what does it do? It goes between your control panel at the house, which we are mostly Napco products, but it will work on virtually any panel out there. It traps the information from the panel, retransmits to Napco, their Napco Operations Center, and then they retransmit to your central station. And they can also retransmit from the central station. It can be IP, or it can be a phone line to your central station. You have the choice, depending on what your central station wants, and you have that type of choice. But from the house or the business to Napco, it will go over the cell towers. And you look for a certain signal strength you have to see for it to be reliable. And all the radios that I put in, very reliable. What has it done for me? It's eliminate the phone calls. And there are a lot of dealers out there. I talked to a lot of people about the headaches they get. Fail to communicate. The signal didn't get through. They do a log. It tried to go through. It's just amazing the problems you have with VoIP. How many signals get scrambled. With the radios, not only is the cost way down there, as George was explaining earlier, in your monthly, $5 a month for a residential radio is nothing. It eliminates you, as a dealer, your headaches you get from people who fail to communicate. It gives the customer a better level of security. You can upload, download, without the customer even knowing you're doing anything. Pull logs, do change of codes very simply. We do that. We charge $25 a change. So it's just a much better way to do the product. The product line is it's very, very reliable, better than POTS. I always say to people, POTS line, plain old telephone service, is 99.9% reliable. The GSM radio, 99.8%. VoIP, 95%. UVerse, about 90%. And that's what I do see. So it's very reliable network. I would fully trust it. Because, again, the days of the POTS line and VoIP, POTS line going away, VoIP is going to be president, and a lot of people, especially the millennials, well, they have cell phones. There's no phones at their house. So it's also an opportunity for you dealers, for your existing customers, is to upsell to a radio, and we sell them for $199, residential world, and we get $15 more per month. Napco gets $5. So we're increasing our revenue by $10 per month on existing accounts. Napco gives great flyers you can mail out. Anytime you hear them fail to communicate, you call your customers, an opportunity for you to sell a radio because it's so reliable. So, and I was also doing a training class not long ago. I had 60 long techs there and some owners and everything. I was talking, and I said, how many people use radios? I was really shocked, just as Peter mentioned before, about how many people are not taking proactive to it. Out of that class, 30 of them don't use radios yet. I said, why? So we're afraid of it. We don't think it's going to work. I said, well, let me ask you a question. How many people call you right now would fail to communicate? And they all raise their hand. I said, well, you know how many people call me? Very, very few. Out of 1,700 radios, I probably got one a day that's not communicating, and it's my fault because I put it where I shouldn't have put it. I put it in the basement, and the signal strength was not good. And again, with the radios, you read the direction, tell you exactly what to do properly. If you do it improperly, you have zero problems. So it's an opportunity to give your customer a better security system for communication. It's an opportunity for you to keep that customer because they want to get rid of their phone. Oh, we're going to cancel the alarm because what else are we going to do? Well, you have an option now, and you're going to make more revenue for yourself. And it's very easy in the future. You don't have to worry about that. Well, what happens when they change from 3G to 6G? I said, in Napco world, all you're going to do is change the card. Very inexpensive to do. And we have a lot of 2G radios out there. I did start with some earlier ones of Napcos. I've been changing those, and I have a lot of other manufacturers, 2G. We're just going out. We're doing it for $99. As you see earlier, Napco is giving you a $70 credit on every single radio you remove and you put in a Napco radio. So the cost is so inexpensive. So if I'm taking a radio out, $99, I'm breaking even on it. I'm maintaining a customer. I'm retaining the extra revenue. I'm giving the customer a better job because we're in the security business first, money making second. I always had a philosophy, you do the job right, the money will follow. So this radio is such a great opportunity. So the technology available now is GSM and IP. You have to make the decision of what's the best for you. And I do believe for you and your customer, GSM is the way to go. IP will be around, and it's certain applications where it's viable. But you have to make the decision. Residential world, I would never use IP. I would use GSM all the time, just because the modems, how many people put a backup battery on their modem in the event of a power failure? I had many cases where there's cable modems out there. We all know they need power. Sometimes they don't put a battery on. Sometimes they do. It lasts 4 hours. What happens when you had a low temperature in the house? The power went out. 12 hours later, it got cold. No signal goes out. Customers calling and screaming at you. And you say, look, it's the cable company's fault. Of course, they can't get anybody at the cable company who's going to do it, explain the situation. So the GSM radio has taken that equation out. How many times as a dealer does it cost you money because the customer has a failed to communicate? The cable company was just here. The cable company refuses to come back. What do? You go out there and you charge them. They yell at you. So I've done many of fixing the cable company's mess. It's my nickel, but I'm trying to maintain a customer. And out of those, I get a 50% upselling into a GSM radio when they understand they can get a remote app. Everybody's seen the advertisement on TV. Always remember, you sell these radios stating, and I always tell them, by the way, besides the higher level security, you also get an app, like you see on TV, and people go, really, I can turn on my smartphone? Yeah, so that's a great selling feature you have with that technology, the GSM radio. So it's such a great product, and the opportunities you have with it. And the reliability, to me, blows out the world of the VoIP. There's no comparison at all. And POTS lines, as they're going away, you will not have any option at all but to do radio or IP. But GSM, a lot of studies have been done. They're finding that has overtaken IP, which everybody thought the IP world was going to take over. GSM radio is very, very strong. And the Napco product, you can upload, download, and that radio is universal to take over accounts that are locked out. You can actually put a Napco radio on there. It will trap the information. You retransmit it to your central station as whatever you want to put in. So it's very versatile. We bought a lot of companies. I have a lot of accounts. We call ourselves a muck company. I have everything out there. This Napco radio works on just about everything when they have problems. It's a great, reliable product, but it's the way of the future. You must protect your company and your future interests. Anybody not doing radios now or not talking to their customers, you're giving them the left in times. So definitely take a look at the Napco radio. If you're on at shows or ask for literature, call your NAP. They'll give you a rep in the area and try one. It's a great product. And you're going to also eliminate phone calls, fail to comment. It actually saves you money. I've actually had some people with so bad a service for VoIP. I get calls from them, every other month or quite a bit of calls with a problem. And I've actually done a couple of radios for free. I still get the monthly. You know what it did? It prevents my workload. It's a money saver for me. So it's all around benefit for everybody, the dealer, the customer, and your central station, everybody to deal with the radio, the GSM radio is a advanced device. You go to the next slide. Okay, so again, thank you for inviting me here. And anybody has questions, you just call up Napco. They're happy to answer. And just remember, this product, I believe, is the way of the future. But don't be left behind. The money-making opportunity for you, and it's a fantastic product. So thank you.
Jim, thank you very much for your thoughts, and really appreciate you joining us today. So let's get to our final speaker, the legendary Jedi Master in the Central Station realm, Morgan Hertel, VP of Operations for Rapid Response. He has trained many other masters over the years and served on numerous alarm groups and associations. Please welcome our final speaker, Jedi Master Morgan, as he provides us with his view of where the future of mobile communications technology is going. Morgan, in your humble opinion, what say you about where we are going in this future world of communications?
Well, thanks, George, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just going over a couple things. I think that's important to kind of set the baseline for where I'm going to end up going with this. But let's go ahead and go to the next slide. POTS lines is, as earlier it was said, the old Sprint ad of we went from a network you could hear a pin drop to now the most recent ads of the network with the least dropped calls. POTS lines are falling apart for a couple of reasons. One, they're obviously getting transitioned quickly to packet networks because of costs, but also socially, POTS lines are just going away. People aren't using them anymore, and I get calls every day into our offices looking for help with POTS lines, and just because it's they think they got a copper line, they think it's going to be okay, and it's not. We're seeing more and more and more signal degradation across all these multiple networks, and it's not getting any better. That's for sure. And one of the reasons that it's not going to get any better is because you now have a lot more players in that. Toll-free used to be pretty simple. If a call went out on to a toll-free number, it would go straight from a premises to whoever that long-distance carrier was, and off to the central station, and life was good. And you could hear a pin drop across that network. And today, you now have, what we call inter-exchange carriers or tandem carriers, and they sit between all these different entities. So now that everybody and their mother's into becoming a phone company, there's now a whole new industry of inter-exchange carriers that sit between all these various companies and bridge all these calls up, and they do it at the lowest rate possible. Sometimes you hear the term least cost route, and these guys are actually bidding on calls in real time on a per call basis. So somebody like Comcast, for example, will run anywhere from 3 to 6 different inter-exchange carriers all at the same time, and they're all bidding on how inexpensively they're going to bridge that call up. And not to pick on Comcast, but just because that's a known entity out there today. But they all do basically the same thing. And that's why you see some areas work better than others going to other areas, and work worse going to others, because you have all these different middlemen now handing these calls off back and forth. So POTS, from my perspective, and for what we're seeing in the central station, and today we're handling 1 million signals a day, 1 million phone calls in and out of our operations today, and the error rates are just continuing to climb. And there's really not a lot the alarm industry can do about it. Even though I can pick up the phone and call a Comcast and take care of a regional problem, it doesn't necessarily help us out, overall. There's just too many people in the pie today, and when you look at the whole thing to try and keep this going. So as you continue to grow your alarm company operation and continue to either sell or upgrade, my advice is the same as the others: is that you gotta get away from POTS lines, because they're not going to be around, and even if they are, they're likely not going to be anywhere near as reliable as they were from years ago. Now that other alternatives exist, it's time to move on. Everybody talks about cellular, and if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, and I also hear from people that whatever we do has to be forever. I grew up in the alarm business in the late 70s and 80s as well, and you'd hang a box on the wall, and the expectation was that alarm system's going to last 30, 40 years, and some of them have, and we're still monitoring systems that were, installed in the 70s and still transmitting on dial-up. But cellular brings a whole new animal to that. It's now going to require some change, and so one of the things I wanted to do was explain, what a G is and what that really means, because I hear a lot of confusion about this, especially when we're talking about 3G/4G. And the term G just stands for a generation, or a type of communication. It's all performance based. So when we talk about 3G, if you wanted to be able to have a 3G communicator out there, it means that the technology that it was working on at the time could get to about 100K in data transmission. It didn't matter whether it was using GSM or CDMA or some other technology in terms of its backbone. It was really just, could it get to a minimum speed, and that's what a G was called. And today now 4G, which was the next iteration, the current 4G was to get to 100 megs, and in that world, AT&T got to 100 megs by leveraging HSPA+, because that could do a theoretical 100 megs, and Sprint got there on WiMAX because that theoretically could get to 100 megs. But that's what 4G really meant. And what we're seeing today is that 4G, in terms of what we know of 4G being in the last 2 or 3 years, is likely going to sunset somewhere around 2020. and you're going to be right back to where you are today in 2G going away. The traditional, what we know is 3G and 4G going away, being replaced with LTE. LTE, which stands for long-term evolution, is going to be the staple product, and it will likely be sometime between 2020 and 2021 that LTE will take over, and what you know of today being rolled out in 4G alarm radios will no longer be functioning very well. Much like 2G took a sunset, it didn't go dark at once. It took a year or so for it to go dark. But don't kid yourself. We got to be ready to be in some 5 to 7 year cycles on this stuff. You're starting to see more and more manufacturers now, create the replaceable module on it, whether that's a truck roll replacement or something you could send a consumer in the mail and have them do it. That's certainly where the industry is going. The other thing that's out there today is Wi-Fi. A lot of people, have not adopted IP because they didn't want to run a wire to a router. They thought that was confusing because usually the router's on somebody's desktop somewhere. It's not always the easiest place to run a wire to. So you're starting to see alarms on Wi-Fi now, and that is starting to make some sense. When you start looking at all these technologies, there's not a one of them that's perfect. And so when people come and ask me and they say, well, what do you think you should do? What do you think is the best solution? And, when I objectively look at everything under the sun, there's nothing that I want to bet the farm on by itself. And I am a big proponent of using 2 paths. And you can pick the 2 paths you want, but I think 2 is always better than 1. So, whether that means you do something over IP or Wi-Fi as a primary model and do your downloading and all your comfort services and everything like that over a pretty fat and free pipe, and then use some form of radio as a backup solution, whether that's cellular using one of the 2 major carriers, or it could even be something like an AES network or some other sort of non-public type radio. I think that really makes really good sense from my perspective. It doesn't always fit into the marketplace, but if you ask me what the best of the best is, pick 2 paths, learn how they work, and stick with those things. Let's go to the next slide. There's a couple other things that are now into the mix that I just want to sort of enlighten everybody with, and that is the concept of clearinghouses. Many of these signals are now going to various clearinghouses, so signals are going from the premises to an alarm.com or a Napco or an AlarmNet or somebody like that. And they're getting regurgitated, databased, and then kicked back to central stations. Just keep aware those are not always perfect. They do have issues, and they do have occasional problems and outages and things like that. So part of your dual path concept, keep that in mind. The other 2 things I wanted to also just make sure that everybody keeps in mind is, compliance with UL 681, which is the burglary standards, to understand how to do that. If you're going to do line supervision, make sure that those radios are programmed for line supervision. And then under fire, you got a couple of options today too, and a lot of people don't understand this, so I just wanted to bring it up, and that is that if you're going to do residential fire, you got to make sure you do monthly tests on those accounts at a very minimum. So make sure those are working. If you're going to do commercial fire on those accounts and you're going to comply with standards prior to NFPA 2013, and that's just because it's now 2016 doesn't mean that the fire department or the community you're working with has adopted that code section. So you need to comply with whatever code year that the local HJ is using. You got to make sure that that's going to be supervised down to about 300 seconds on prior to 2013. 2013 and on, the whole world changes in that world, and dialers are no longer allowed to be used as dual dialers. You now can only use a single path as a dialer if you want to do a dual path, so you'll end up with a dialer checking every 6 hours if you're going to try and do that, and then a radio or some other IP or some other path that's also checking in and has a 6-hour supervision. If you only want to use single path and you want to go with just GSM or CDMA or something like that, you're now back to a 1-hour supervision level compared to 300 seconds before that. So it's a lot less onerous on you to do that. But 2013 and on, no more dual dialers. You can't do dual DACs. You're going to have to use some other technology in addition to that. And what we see mostly in the space is people just doing a single path radio or single path over IP and supervising it to an hour and moving on. I got through that quickly, and we're on time. So there you go, George. I'll give it back to you.
Thanks very much, Morgan. Appreciate all your help on this too. So let's go to we have a little bit of time for questions and answers. So if you have any more questions that you want to shove over to us, just use the questions window. But I'm gonna ask the first question, which came in, and it's directed at George. Does the StarLink Connect work with Interlogic panels?
Not as of yet. What we're introducing at ISC West works with DSC and Honeywell and Napco panels.
Okay, I'm sure.
And by the way,
go ahead.
And by the way, to Morgan's point, it is dual path because, I mean, that's a great point. You definitely want a couple of paths of communication going forward because everything's changing.
Got it. So this is going to Peter. What are the proactive dealers doing or presenting? How are they presenting this issue to consumers? What are they doing to communicate to their customers and users about getting rid of their POTS lines and converting to new technology?
Well, again, you have two. You have your legacy clients and you have your new ones. I mean, the new potential clients that you're pitching on systems, if they never had a system, they're just going forward and presenting their system and the methods in which it communicates just based on its own merits. Going back to look at the customers who've had systems in the past or have systems right now, they're just basically bringing it forward to say that the company has taken a position that many of the stronger companies throughout the world have taken, and no longer are tying their systems to telephone lines because of the issues. And the industry does have these other means in addition to bringing the advantage that we're sure that the signal is going to come through, they have these other benefits that we discuss, whether it be the app or whether it be the interaction. So it's done in a very positive sense because it is a positive thing. So again, the biggest thing that I've seen people do that really cause them to fail at this is when they go and give them the choice and say, we're giving you the choice because we've seen issues like this exist, and we don't want to have these issues. And that's part of the problem. It actually looks like your alarm company doesn't know what they're doing, and you've seen these issues. It's more about taking a positive approach, especially if they're going to take another bid from another company, because you want to make sure that, say, if anyone's trying to sell you anything but this, that's a red flag right there. So it's just about staying ahead of it.
Yeah, and Jim, if you can give me just like a 20-second answer to this. We know that how you're dealing with your new customers, but how are you communicating with your legacy customers now as far as trying to get them to upgrade?
Yeah, well, what we do, and I was going to add to this, is every bill that goes out, reoccurring for monitoring or whatever it may be, we can put in our software, thinking of getting rid of your phone line, please call us. That gets embedded in the bill. We also have Napco has tri-folders that you can get. They will send them every single bill that goes out, like a service call, besides being embedded in the bill, we send that flyer out. And we get a good response back. So our existing customer base that's not calling us, and we will explain, everybody calls, especially a phone line problem, we explain about the radio, but we send that, we embed it in our bill, we send out the tri-flyer that Napco supplies, and we also have emails a lot of the customers, and we do blanket emails also. Thinking of getting rid of your phone lines, we have the solution. We put it on our bill.
Okay. So this one's going to Morgan, and this is probably this could be another webinar all by itself. But as it relates to the Internet of Things and cloud convergence, what, if any, will be the impact on next-gen mobile and wireless networks, and what will our industry need to consider in this convergence paradigm?
Well, yeah, that is a whole new seminar for sure. I mean, you're going to see all kinds of new technology and Internet of Things. You know, 5G is right around the corner for mobile communications, although it's probably not going to be at the handset level. It'll be at the home level, but you're going to see incredibly high bandwidth applications that are going to be used wirelessly inside of homes. The Internet of Things is obviously, something we have to pay attention to, and also leverage and incorporate into the lifestyle things that our customers are interested in doing. I think if you stick your head in the sand and say that doesn't exist, it's going to run you right over. And whether that means that alarm companies are going to have to change the way they work, change the way they hire, they're going to have to hire more IT style people, it's absolutely going to be part of our world. And certainly lots and lots and lots of stuff is moving to the cloud. And, you see the alarm industry adopting that very well. Alarm.com and Total Connect, and Napco, it's all in the cloud. That's where it is.
So
it's part of the process.
Yeah, thank you on that. So we're going to cover some of these questions are about liability. And Peter, I'm sure you can jump in on this one. Do you think you're going to see more attorneys latching on potential lawsuits around alarm companies not converting older communications technology to latest technologies? Do you think that's going to possibly happen when losses are because somebody has not converted to newer technology?
I mean, I think it's very possible. I mean, current agreements right now obviously have a lot of stops in there in regard to telecommunication changes that could affect the signal coming to the central station. And they're in there for good intent, and they need to be there. But, you bring up a good point. It's very, very possible that because this really is of epidemic proportion, if an alarm company can't prove that they've made some type of positive effort to educate and bring their client to a place where they would be better served, I think it's going to be hard to defend that when they even, try to jump over those clauses that exist in contracts. So I think it's real important. I mean, it goes back, it's amazing how things go full circle. I remember when AlarmNet first came into play, and I was GM of a small company in Florida back in the early 80s, and with AlarmNet, one of the cool things they did, and they just had one radio at the time, with our dealership, they gave us a rubber stamp to put on our contracts to get the customers to sign off to say, well, we offered you backup protection and you refused it. It's kind of the same thing. You almost want to cover yourself, but at the same time educate them. And I think that as attorneys work, I think eventually they may find a way to get around it. But again, I don't think companies should be comfortable just because those clauses exist in their monitoring agreements that they're covered. Because again, there's a certain amount of responsibility that you just have, and part of that is communication.
Well, you touched on something that's very important that I would suggest that everybody, all listeners, pay attention to. Make sure your contracts are up to date and that it does include the right language to protect you with all the converging technologies that are being used today, that you are encapsulating all those into your agreement. So with that, I'd like to thank, because we're getting to the end of our time here, but thank again to all our speakers for their valuable insights, and to Napco StarLink for sponsoring this event. So, and of course, as far as I'm concerned, the learning doesn't stop here. Be sure to attend ESX 2016 and gain the business intelligence necessary to compete in today's marketplace. This year's central theme for the event is Explore, Expand, Exchange, and Evolve, all geared for you and your team to discover what's next for your business in the coming years. The conference program is peer-developed and peer-delivered in 4 educational tracks to help security and life safety professionals better run their companies, grow their businesses, maximize their central stations, and rethink the future. We have a full conference catalog on esxweb.com that will provide the information to make your ESX journey a valuable one. From a vibrant exhibit hall with innovative products and services and inspiring keynote presentations from the main stage to dynamic networking opportunities, ESX is designed with you in mind to help you grow professionally and remain relevant. So it's a great time to lock in your registration and savings. Act now to take advantage of the Super Saver pricing, and you will qualify for a group discount 20% if you bring 3 or more team members from your company. And details are on esxweb.com, along with information on pass types, hotels, travel discounts, and much more. Again, thank you for attending today's session, and we look forward to seeing you and your team at ESX 2016 in Fort Worth. If you would like to review this session again, the recording of this webinar will be made available on esxweb.com in the coming days. This concludes today's webinar.